I knew something was wrong the moment I checked my phone for the 5th time and still saw no new message. My hands would not stop shaking as I smoothed the wrinkles of my navy blue dress again and again, like the fabric could calm my nerves. The restaurant felt too fancy for someone like me. Candlelight glowed on dark wooden tables, soft music floated through the air, and people around me laughed in low, confident voices. Everyone looked like they belonged here. Everyone except me. I glanced at the time. It was already 7:15. We were supposed to meet at 7. I told myself to be patient, but my chest felt tight. I had spent over an hour curling my hair with a borrowed iron, burning my fingers twice, just hoping tonight would be different. I was tired of bad dates and lonely nights. When the hostess had walked me to this table for 2, she gave me a look that felt like quiet pity. I pretended not to notice. I ordered only water and told the server I was waiting for someone. I tried to sound confident, but my heart was racing. My purse felt light on my lap. Inside it was my cracked phone, an almost empty lip gloss, and exactly $8.75, just enough for the bus ride home. He had promised to pay for dinner. That was the only reason I agreed to come somewhere this expensive. At 7:30, I sent another message. I stared at the screen before pressing send. Still waiting at our table. Traffic? The message disappeared, and the silence that followed felt heavy. Every minute stretched longer than the last. People kept walking past my table, and I imagined them wondering why I was sitting alone. At 7:45, my phone finally buzzed. My heart jumped, then dropped hard when I read the message. Lol. Did you actually show up? I was just messing with you. Not worth the Uber. Another message came right after. Can't believe you fell for it. Send pics of your sad dinner for one. It felt like the air left my lungs. My face burned with shame, and tears rushed to my eyes. I stared at the screen, wishing the words would disappear. I refused to cry there in public. I straightened my back, folded the clean napkin on my lap, and told myself I would leave with whatever dignity I had left. I grabbed my purse and stood up slowly. That was when I felt it. Someone was watching me. 2 tables behind me, a man sat completely still with a glass of whiskey in front of him. He wore a dark suit that looked perfectly made for him. He did not smile or talk. His eyes were calm but intense, fixed on me. I did not know why, but his gaze made me pause. He had noticed everything. The way I waited, the way my hope faded, the way I tried to hide my pain. Before I could take another step, a server suddenly appeared at my table with a plate of steaming pasta and a glass of sparkling wine. Her voice was loud enough for others to hear. She smiled warmly and said my dinner had arrived. I froze. I told her there had been a mistake. I had not ordered anything. She shook her head and gently set the plate down. She said it had been taken care of. She nodded toward the back of the room and added that a gentleman wanted me to know I deserved dinner, no matter who showed up. My heart pounded as I slowly sat back down. Hunger fought with suspicion inside me. I scanned the room and my eyes found him again. The man with the whiskey. He did not approach. He simply waited, giving me space to decide. I picked up my fork with trembling fingers and took one bite. My shoulders relaxed without me meaning to. I had not realized how hungry I was. A few minutes later, he stood and walked toward me. His steps were calm and controlled. He stopped a short distance from my chair, close enough for me to feel his presence. His voice was low and steady when he spoke. He told me to finish my meal. He said the chef took pride in his work. I asked him why he would do this for someone he did not know. He looked at me with clear, serious eyes and said he recognized dignity when he saw it. He said kindness did not always come with conditions. He did not smile. He did not ask my name. He turned to leave. Before I could stop myself, I asked him to stay. I told him it felt wrong to eat alone when there was enough for 2. He hesitated, something unreadable passing through his eyes. Then he pulled out the chair across from me and sat down. 3 days later, I was standing in line at my favorite small coffee shop near campus, counting out exact change for a plain black coffee. I was balancing classes, work, and exhaustion. When the barista handed me 2 cups instead of 1, she nodded toward the corner. He was there. He sat alone at a small table, sleeves rolled up, watching me like he had been expecting me. He remembered my coffee order. He remembered me. As I walked toward him, I had no idea that this was the moment my life truly began to change. I sat across from him in that small coffee shop, my fingers wrapped tightly around the warm cup like it was grounding me to the moment. The noise around us faded as soon as I met his eyes. He looked different from the restaurant night. No suit, no polished formality, just a crisp shirt, rolled sleeves, and a calm confidence that made my heart beat faster without warning. He asked about my classes, and I told him about nursing school, about long nights at the hospital and longer nights studying. I told him how tired I always felt, how sometimes it seemed like I was running just to stay in the same place. He listened in a way most people never did. He did not interrupt or rush me. His attention felt heavy, like every word mattered. When I asked what he did for work, he smiled slightly and said he dealt with imports and consulting. His answer felt careful, like there was more behind it, but I did not push. Something told me he would tell me when he was ready. 2 hours passed without either of us noticing. When I stood to leave for class, I expected him to ask for my number. He did not. He simply wished me luck on my exam. I walked out confused but smiling. That night, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. It was an invitation to a charity gala at the Westmore Hotel. Medical research funding. No pressure. I knew it was him. My stomach twisted with excitement and fear. How did he know my number? How did he know this would interest me? I told myself to be careful, but I typed yes before I could overthink it. Saturday night came faster than I expected. I stood in front of my mirror wearing a borrowed green dress, hardly recognizing myself. When I arrived at the hotel, the rooms sparkled with lights and expensive laughter. I felt small until he appeared beside me. His presence was steady, protective. He told me I belonged there, and somehow I believed him. As the night went on, I noticed people watching him. Conversations stopped when he passed. He moved through the room like someone used to command. When 3 men entered and the energy shifted, he guided me outside without hesitation. His body placed itself between me and danger before I even realized there was danger. One of the men stared at him with clear hostility. When I asked who he was, he gave a vague answer about business rivals. But the way his jaw tightened told me this was not simple business. Pieces began to fall into place. The restaurant, the respect, the quiet power. I told him it did not change how I felt. I meant it. 3 weeks later, everything shattered. I was walking home from a late hospital shift when a black car stopped beside me. One of his men stepped out and told me I had to come with him immediately. His voice was urgent. My heart raced, but I trusted him. That trust would change everything. They took me to a house hidden far from the city. He was waiting for me, anger and fear fighting in his eyes. He told me I was in danger, that someone had been watching me, that I should never have been pulled into his world. Before I could fully understand, headlights appeared outside. Men moved into position. Guns were drawn. My hands shook as reality crashed down around me. This was not a misunderstanding. This was his life. That night, I learned the truth. He was not just a businessman. He was powerful, dangerous, feared. And yet, when bullets shattered glass and chaos filled the house, he covered me with his body without hesitation. In that moment, fear faded into something else. Trust, connection. Something deeper than logic. By morning, the house was destroyed. One of his men was wounded, and my training took over. I treated him without thinking, hands steady despite the horror around me. I saw something shift in his eyes as he watched me work. Later, in a high-rise overlooking the water, he told me he planned to send me away. New life, new name, safety. He thought he was protecting me. I told him he was wrong. I told him I would not run, that I wanted to help, that I noticed things others missed, that I chose him, danger and all. He looked at me like I had just changed the rules of his world. And that was when we realized this was no longer just his fight. It was ours. The moment I said I would stay, the room felt different. He looked at me like he was seeing me clearly for the first time, not as someone to protect, but as someone who chose him. Still, fear lived behind his eyes. He warned me again. He told me his world destroyed people. I told him I was already living in survival mode long before I met him. At least now, I understood the danger. Over the next few days, I saw more than I ever expected. Men came and went quietly. Phones rang constantly. Voices stayed low. I paid attention to everything. Who avoided eye contact? Who checked their phone too often? Who seemed nervous when his enemy's name came up? I had spent years watching patients hide pain behind smiles. This was not so different. He trusted 7 people with everything. One of them had betrayed him. That truth weighed on him more than any threat outside. The enemy was close, watching, waiting. I could feel it in the air. Slowly, patterns emerged. One man stood out. He smiled too much, asked too many questions, left rooms when conversations turned serious. When I mentioned certain details, his hands tightened. His breathing changed. He did not know I was watching, but I was. When I finally told him who I suspected, he went quiet. Long quiet. He did not want to believe it. Loyalty meant everything to him. Betrayal cut deeper than bullets. But he trusted my instincts. He trusted me. They made a plan. I was supposed to stay hidden. I hated that part, but I understood why it mattered. The meeting place was an old warehouse near the docks. Fog rolled in thick that night, swallowing sound and light. My heart hammered so hard I thought everyone could hear it. He stood calm in the open space, unarmed, like he owned the air itself. His enemy arrived with men and weapons, confidence dripping from every step. Their words were sharp. Old history. Old blood. I listened from the shadows, barely breathing. Then I saw the traitor slip away toward the back. My stomach twisted. I sent the signal. Everything exploded at once. A gunshot echoed. Someone screamed. The traitor fell. Chaos followed. Shots fired into darkness. Men shouted orders. I pressed myself against cold metal, praying I would not be seen. My whole body shook, but my mind stayed clear. Through broken glass, I saw movement others missed. 2 men circling, closing in. No one else noticed. I acted without thinking. I knocked over stacked metal barrels. The crash was loud enough to shake the building. It gave his men just enough time. Water suddenly poured from above. Sprinklers activated. Blood mixed with water on the floor. It was horrifying. Real. Nothing like movies. I could not stay hidden anymore. I stepped forward, hands raised, my medical bag swinging at my side. My voice surprised me. It was steady. I told them to stop. I told them people were hurt. I told them pride was not worth more lives. Everyone froze. He looked terrified when he saw me exposed. But I did not stop. I told them I was a nurse, that I would help anyone bleeding, that this did not have to end with more death. For a long moment, no one moved. Then his enemy lowered his gun. Negotiations followed. Quiet, tense, exhausted. When dawn came, it felt like the world had survived something it should not have. Men were treated. Wounds were bandaged. Lines were redrawn without another shot. Later, when the warehouse stood silent again, he looked at me like I had rewritten his future. He said no one had ever stood between him and violence without fear. I told him fear did not mean weakness. 3 months passed. Things changed. Slowly, carefully. Businesses shifted into legitimate paths. Old habits died hard, but he stayed firm. He built something new instead of tearing others down. He asked for my opinion more than anyone else's. The place where the confrontation happened became something else entirely. A medical center. A place for healing. When I walked through its halls for the first time, my throat tightened. Pain had been turned into purpose. One afternoon, I saw the man who abandoned me that first night. He stood across campus, staring like he did not recognize me. Maybe he did not. I walked past him without stopping. That night, as city lights reflected on the water, he told me I changed him. I told him he changed himself. I just believed he could. He held my hand tightly, like he was afraid to let go of the life we were building. And deep down, I knew something was coming. Because peace never lasts long in a world that remembers violence, and love like ours always gets tested one final time. The peace did not break loudly. It faded quietly, like a warning you only understand after it passes. I felt it in the way he stayed awake longer at night, in the way his phone never left his hand, in the way he watched the world like it might suddenly turn on us. 6 months after the night at the warehouse, he took me back to the same restaurant where we first met. The table was the same, the light was the same, but I was not the same woman who once sat there with only bus fare and a broken heart. I reached across the table and squeezed his hand, feeling the strength there and the vulnerability he only showed me. He told me he had made a final decision. He was done with the shadows. Done with fear ruling his life. He said every door he closed behind him was because of me. Because I showed him a future that did not need blood to survive. After dinner, he took out a small box and placed it beside my water glass. Inside was not just a ring, but a key, a deed, a medical clinic in my name, a place for people like the woman I once was, people forgotten, people struggling. When he asked me to marry him, his voice was steady, but his eyes were not. I said yes without hesitation. The transition was not easy. There were threats, warnings, people who did not want him to change. But he stood firm. For the first time, he was not reacting to danger. He was leading toward something better. The clinic opened 3 months later. No questions asked. No judgment given. I worked there between hospital shifts, treating people who reminded me why I chose nursing in the first place. He funded it quietly at first, then proudly when he realized hiding no longer served him. One evening, as we walked along the harbor, he admitted something he had never said before. He told me he held his breath the first night he saw me stand up from that table. He thought he was watching another person disappear into the world unnoticed. When I stayed, when I accepted kindness without losing dignity, it changed him. I told him I held my breath too, from the moment I realized someone had seen me when I felt invisible. On our wedding day, there were no weapons, no guards. Just sunlight, laughter, and a quiet promise that the past would never own us again. The man who once ruled through fear stood beside me with open hands and an open future. Sometimes, late at night, I think about that abandoned blind date, about the girl who almost walked out with nothing but bus fare and humiliation. I wish I could tell her to stay seated just a little longer, to trust that even the worst moments can lead to unexpected salvation. Because behind her pain, someone was watching, someone was holding his breath. And that moment changed everything.